UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Happy New Month to all of you, and the 1st of July in this country officially shows us that the new financial year begins here. But the 2024-2025 budget has had a showdown between the executive and the parliament. The budget was passed on the 13th of May by parliament, read by the Minister of Finance on the 13th of July. The President wrote a letter on the 22nd of June to Parliament, hitherto forcing the Parliament to come back from recess. His letter had 3 grounds that were there. 1, indiscipline of budget. 2, sabotage of national priorities. And 3, getting the people to Parliament being massively corrupt. Yesterday there was an uproar in Parliament where many members of Parliament wanted to speak. Is this cleaning up of the budget, or it's a facade by the executive? Today we have members of Parliament and someone representing the Minister of Finance to put that into perspective. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, let us know what you think, or go to our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, let us know what you think. Or the number 0709 62 25 90. Let us know what you think by text or WhatsApp. Let's get to the panel. She's back. Her travels were hopeful. Professor Sarah Sali, a Dean at the School of Women and Gender Affairs at Makerere University. She's with us this evening. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers.
Welcome back, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Next to the Professor is one we call on when we need to discuss money. Honorable Paul Omara, representing the people of Otuke County and also a member of the Budget Committee. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. I hope we shall have a very robust debate tonight. Welcome.
Hopefully, normally we expect such an undertone from Dr. Sarah, but she's here today. We'll see what she tells us. Also next to the Honorable is Dr. Sarah Berete, the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, listeners and viewers. Glad to be back.
Thank you very much. Also, Honorable Mwanga Muhammad Chivumbi, Member of Parliament representing the people of Butambala, but also the Chairman of PAC. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and next time you introduce Omara, you introduce him for what he is. He's a Mugaga.
He's a Mugaga, the rich man.
He's a rich man.
It's the 3rd time I'm hearing that statement. Lastly but not least, Mr. Moses Kagwa, the Director of Finance at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here this evening.
So today we discussed the appropriation bill. Yesterday, Parliament decided to assent to what the President had pushed to them, and even the allegations that were made in that letter that was read to them. We wonder what happened, but let's play you a clip for you to get perspective of what happened. Okay, apologies for that technical glitch. Let's jump into the conversation straight away. Honorable Mara, it's only befitting that we start with you because you sit on the Budget Committee. Honorable Chivumbi is also here, is an ex-officio on that committee. How did we get here? And has Parliament failed to execute its mandate of appropriation of this budget?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I think yesterday was a sad day in our parliamentary democracy because this has never happened since our independence, that a president returns an appropriation bill after it has been passed and after it has been read. My reading, given what has happened consequently, where the MPs were arrested on charges of corruption, where our leader has been sanctioned, of course, by UK and the US, an intensive media campaign against Parliament. I think the return of the bill, in my view, I think was further to weaken Parliament, because It came at a time when our credibility were on the rag, to show the country that Parliament is corrupt, from the letter of the President, and possibly have a serious defeat in 2026, so that you can have few members returning. In the meantime, the executive will use that as an excuse for cleaning up itself, even of corruption. So it was very sad for us. And there is this sense which has been created in the public that the budget committee is corrupt. And some of us take serious offense when you blanket us and say we are corrupt. And some of our colleagues actually fell for it. Some of them are saying, no, but this thing cannot be returned to budget committee because it's corrupt. I want to tell the country, if you have 7 children and one of them is a thief, Timothy, would they say Timothy's family is full of thieves when there is one fellow? Even in the executive, there are very many people who have been stealing money from this country. So they are blanket cast as thieves, and then what a way to humiliate a house like that. And so yesterday I tried really to speak out, but I did not have a chance to have my say, because I have never seen parliamentarians so angry, especially members of an NRM party. Because I want the country to know the budget process takes almost over 3 months, where we sit in meetings. The Minister of Finance brings in the budget framework paper. First of all, they have the interministerial conversation. As a cabinet, they sit. The Minister of Finance collate that. They build a budget framework paper to indicate the aspiration of government of where they want to go. We discuss it in a robust way. And later on, Parliament makes its suggestions to the executive. Later on, the ministerial policy statement comes. It goes to the sectoral committees. It comes back. They come with a budget proposal. It's a long discussions where Parliament makes suggestions to the executive. But most of the times, by the way, even that engagement, they ignore parliamentary suggestions. What the budget committee collate are actually recommendations of the sectoral committee, which we compile together, and then we make recommendations to the House. But here is the criteria we use. The criteria we use, by the way, the constitutional responsibility of members of Parliament is just not to come and rubber stamp what the executive gives us. When the budget proposal is made, it's not for us to say, Mr. President, we are very happy, we approve. What we do, we analyze, we interrogate, we consolidate, we make recommendations, and in the process, this is what we look for. We look for lack of absorption. You find sometime in the last financial year, we have given money to entities. But when you look at them, they have not absorbed it. Money has stayed. Now you want more money, you are not able to use the other one previously. Do you have the capacity to absorb it? Secondly, over-provision. You find they provide money in certain areas more than what is required. And we're going to come into the details. Then duplications. You find actually every MDA, now we are moving on a budget, on a program-based budgeting, moving away from the sectoral budgeting. So if IT matters are necessary, then we need to integrate government. We integrate government. But you find every MDA now and then is coming, they want their own technology. Now we are saying, but you are speaking something, French, that you are learning French, but you are speaking English. You are saying we are moved away from sectoral planning into budget planning, but MDAs are still operating in a sectoral manner. So we actually merge those things. And we make thorough observations. What we recommend as budget committee comes from the sectoral committees and come from the ministerial policy statements. Suggestions from the ministers, from the executive itself. Now, to brand all of us that we are corrupt, it's unacceptable. The president actually said he has noted that the corruption starts from Minister of Finance, comes to the MDS, comes to Parliament. Okay, we are not protecting anybody here. MPs have been arrested. Not a single person has been arrested from finance. Neither a permanent secretary arrested. The IGG made a proposal that now we should go and do what?
A lifestyle audit.
A lifestyle audit. President said, no, don't touch them. Who are the people who have apartments in Kampala? Are they the MPs? Can we start a lifestyle audit and everybody account for us the apartments they have, whether 20 or 40, and you are a public servant? So this makes us annoyed. So you want to weaken Parliament? You want to indicate in the population that we are corrupt? You want more exit? Maybe this time 90% of members of Parliament will not come back. Then you have new people. The executive remains. So we are not going to take this thing lying down. Yesterday we were very annoyed, but we actually had a conversation and we agreed that the country is bigger than all of us, bigger than Parliament, bigger than all. We work in the best interest of the country. We said, okay, let the president have his say. But maybe one day our day also will come.
Okay.
Our day of reckoning will come. And we'll go into the details of some of the suggestions. I am happy that the chairman of budget yesterday created a litany of where money were allocated. And Parliament was roaring, yes, that one, yes, yes, yes. The same people, some of them who were accusing us of corruption, were now excited over the allocation that we made. And this is 750 billion in a budget of 72 trillion. And I want to tell the population, just 1 minute, that this differing of budget or adjustment has been happening since independence. For us who are the new freshmen and women, we found it there. So it's not something new that we created. It has been happening those days. Now, 750 billion, which is less than 0.75% of that budget. Last time we did 1.7 trillion and there was no quorum. So now they know that Parliament has been humiliated. It's having a bad press. So what a nice way to go, take a go at it.
Thank you.
It's all well then.
Let me bring in Dr. Sarah. Hearing Honorable Mara and looking at the president's letter, 3 elements stand out in that letter: indiscipline, sabotage, and he also talks about massive corruption. But he also hints on the 3.7 trillion that has been over the 4 financial years been reallocated. And he says that must stop. When you look at this appropriation bill and look at the letter of the president, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I want to add my voice to what Honorable Mara has said. Budgeting takes 9 months, from September of every year to May of the next year. Budget originates from the user department. Then it builds into the budget framework paper. After the budget framework paper, you have policy statements that go to sectoral committees for debate, and then budget committee and the House. So all this process, you have the Ministry of Finance, which was sleeping on the job, if they say priorities were altered. Because the president now is acting as the substantive Minister of Finance through the ministry now. So where was the Minister of Finance in these 9 months? As an observer, I was also disappointed with the 14 trillion corrigenda, and I don't know why Parliament allowed that abuse. That was the first vulgarization of this year's financial process. You have a budget of 58.3 trillion. After the sector committees and the more explanations, it goes to 60 trillion. And then on the final day, you have a corrigenda of 14 trillion. That was vulgarization of this 9 months process by the Ministry of Finance. For me, Parliament made a mistake to allow that vulgarization. Government has an option of doing supplementary budgeting for unforeseeable and unavoidable expenditures or occurrences. Why couldn't they wait with this so-called agenda of 14 trillion that had missed out in the 9 months of detailed budgeting processes. So who was the user department of this 14 trillion? That is the second situation where you have a Minister of Finance sleeping on the job. But also Parliament let that pass. So they allowed abuse as an institution. So when you finish this budgeting process, allowing that abuse, you have further abuse or ridicule. I watched the debate yesterday. The president wrote a very angry letter, which came on 22nd of June, talking about Parliament, how it is sabotaging government through over 4 years, reallocating 3.1 trillion. The usual legal framework process usually has a public participation element. But for the appropriation bill, the public participation element is through people's representatives, who are the MPs. So when you say that the public and the people's representatives have no say on how people's money should be expended, whose money are you spending? That there is a notion, or there is a tendency to forget that public money is people's money. It's not government money. In appropriation, the citizens are represented by their MPs. And they are working together with the user departments, with the ministries, through a 9-month process. So if key priorities were altered, where were the Minister of Finance? And why did they sleep on the job? And why can't they be fired instead of bungling a whole budget process? Then you have what we call key priorities. What are they? 300 billion for local construction. Local in 2022 was given about 357 billion. It is rumored that Rocco's original need was 90 billion. But somehow through the processes, it's good now the evidence, the president says that he has evidence of budget corruption. So you have a user department making a request, you have people keep topping it up until it gets where it is bloated. But Rocco made a request and it was made. Who has made the second request now? And what is the need? And why is it that people's money is continuously spent on individual persons' businesses who continuously declare losses? The companies that the government claims to buy shares from declare their profit or loss, books of accounts through UDA. We can check all their books. They intentionally declare losses to defraud people of their money. And we continue to take people's money in these white elephants. Every budget. So is that an important priority that you need to give local money and you upset the budget? Because half of this money, if you are talking of 770 billion, but 300 billion is for local. So all this, return of the budget is almost about local because it's almost half of the money. And you upset a constitutional framework to give an individual business money. Where was their request? Was it reviewed by Parliament? Was it approved? And is this a key national priority for us as a country? So when you look at all these things...
By the way, they had put it as others. They didn't put in the budget process. They didn't mention it. This is the first time they're mentioning it. So when we saw other what? That's why we removed the money.
Dr. Sarah, let me stay with you. And I saw somewhere, and he will respond, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, responding to some questions, especially on the Public Finance Management Act there, on the roles of Parliament. And it seemed like planning, allocation is for the executive. Approval and consideration and the things that Honorable Omara has mentioned seem to be the Parliament's role. Are there illegalities? Are there lacunas in this law that seem to be playing between the executive and the Parliament there?
Parliament has three key functions: lawmaking, appropriation, and oversight. That's the work of Parliament. When you go in the Constitution, under Article 155 of the Constitution on Financial Year Estimates, the Constitution is very clear that the President will originate estimates that are then subject to the approval of Parliament. That article has several clauses that show that the work of Parliament in approving or how they can even recommend changes.
But they can't allocate.
What is appropriation? Anybody can check a meaning of appropriation. It means the executive originates, but Parliament approves and can approve with amendments. And that's what they do. But these amendments are presumably agreed on in the 9 months budgeting process. It is not a one-day event. So if the recommendations of Parliament altering budget allocations are not welcome, the executive has time to say no and justify their reasons why they are saying no and make their case.
When you look at the president's letter and him talking about this appropriation bill, what area is this specifically talking about? Because it seems like the whole expenditure was brought back.
No,
with no specifics.
We are talking of course, Article 155 and 156 clearly stipulate the role of each of the agencies. So when the president says he needs 750.1 reinstated to their original allocations, 750.47 to be precise, billion reinstated, then it means that he has a weak team that could not make their case through committees where this money was reallocated, through the sector committees, budget committee, and the committee of the whole house in the approval of the budget process. So for me, as a constitutional watchdog, if you have a weak team that cannot negotiate and prove their case before MPs, instead of upsetting a constitutional framework, just fire the team.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, I have seen you go head to head, even talk about the minority report that was presented by Honorable Semuju. But how did we get to this budget dilemma for the first time in our history?
First of all, bills can be returned by the president.
Yes.
And the appropriation bill, in terms of a bill, is like any other bill. So for me, I have no big deal about it. But the big picture is, what animal are we skinning? You are speaking to a president who is in a very panicky mood and panicky situation. His ground is no longer holding. One, when you look at the budget's donor support has literally been wiped out. Secondly, because of our budget indiscipline, literally all our collected revenue are going towards debt filing. We don't even have money to run government next year. Even the 72 trillion is just a joke. I've been here before telling you it's a joke and an absolute joke. There is no magic that I've put a bet. If these gentlemen in finance raise above actual, above 50, about 55 trillion, they will come for a bull from me. Because if they raise above 55 trillion actual expenditure in this budget, they will come for a bull from me. Because since time immemorial, our actual expenditure have never exceeded 45 trillion. The last we tried, we hit 44.8. By actual, some other people may not know. By actual, I mean the actual money we've collected in revenue, in donor support, in loans, and the money we actually spend, because you cannot spend what you have. It has never exceeded 45 trillion. So who is this funny man that comes up with a budget of 72 trillion? Why you have a budget of 72 and where the president is being dishonest to the people? He has another list of expenditure, which they know, which is below the table, which original Omara knows. You see these people here, you may think there is a budget committee, but they have PACOB. Is it PACOB? Presidential budget something.
Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget.
Presidential on budget.
PACOB.
PACOB, which, by the way, is the second below the table that looks at these budget priorities.
So where were they?
Now, a presidential advisor, where all these other people sit. Omara is a member of PACOB, of that advisory committee. And I even know some civil society. I've questioned some. SS Park is a member. I've always questioned them. How can you be part of that? I know some civil society sit on that presidential advisory committee. Now, when they interrogated these figures, the actual budget you brought in a BFP was 50 what? Was
58.3.
What was 50? Was 54. But when they brought a budget of 54, they could not raise the revenue of 54. That was the first lacuna in the budget process. When we had the budget of 54, the revenue were not matching, projected revenue were not matching expenditure. And there was a standoff. That was the first standoff on this budget. We're asking them, where are you going to get the 54 trillion?
Yep.
They could not, they had projected the revenue from all the borrowings and all the other NTR and everything. They were making up to about 50. Then there was a deficit of 4 trillion. But to our dismay, they come up with a budget of 72. An addendum brought a day, hours before, budget could be passed. Omara can bear me witness.
Yes.
Last year, two things happened. You remember, Omara? I came to the budget committee as a shadow minister then, and I warned you that the way we are approaching this reallocation will cause issues. You remember? I was very unpopular in that budget committee meeting. When I warned the entire budget committee that the way you are approaching this reallocation will cause problems. I actually followed it up with a Minority report last year, where I questioned when they moved 100 million, you remember, which was for rural electrification, and had been put to something. I said, but this cannot be done. Therefore, there were excesses in reallocation that needed to be checked. That's a given. But let me take you back to where you come from. You have a president in there whose ground is not holding. Because if you don't have resources to run recurrent expenditure, I'm speaking about recurrent expenditure, literally, because when you talk about statutory obligations and you include wage, you actually wipe away everything you have. He can give you the figures. Take away the amortization, the interest rates. So the first thing to deal with, to know, is that this country has a serious budget crisis. And there is serious gross financial mismanagement. Occasioned by who? Sanctioned by the executive. All these excess expenditures are not sanctioned by Parliament. They're occasioned by the executive, and most of the excess expenditure come with the issue of the blue letter. You know blue letter? Eh? When you ask them, they say that was the directive of the president. Is the one who issues the blue letter. I sit on the budget now on Park, Chair Park. I know two agencies whom were questioning, how comes you are allocated billions of money and you did not request for them? They says we were given. In the Ministry of Energy, they dished out 104 billion without the ministry requesting for supplementary. Why? Was just a conduit for deemed energy. And you ask him about who owns deemed energy. So you have those. Then
you collapse all our ambulances and health centers. And while you are giving out billions quietly. We'll catch you.
Let Kagwa tell us the priority list of the president that is going to be financed on 3%. Now, the figure of 72 was dictated with the figure that was required to be within the range of 3%, which is about 2 trillion, and they have it. And they are quiet about it. That's why yesterday, I asked the Minister of Finance to commit for not repurposing the budget. They call it repurposing. In repurposing, what they do after Parliament has now passed the budget, actually what annoyed them is that their areas of maneuver, where they were repurposing, Parliament had squeezed the space, taken away the fiscal space. Because they are also going to maneuver. By the way, this week, they are maneuvering on how to finance a 3%. And the danger is that Parliament had squeezed that fiscal space for maneuver.
Okay.
And they want 3 trillion. Now,
yes, Honorable Chuvumbi, lastly.
Were there accesses in the reallocation? That's a given. But also, let me speak to Mr. Museveni. Last year, he called the budget committee in State House. Omar attended.
I was not there, I was in South Africa.
You were in South Africa.
I missed it.
When he called the budget committee, he said, I've called you here purposely. I want you to find me money. For what? For coffee. For this coffee thing, you remember? For Wabogo. He called the budget committee in State House to lobby them to do reallocations within the budget to fund his what is it called? Son-in-law project on coffee. Later on, when that money was brought, it was under office of the president. It was later on taken into classified. I said, how can coffee beans be taken into, become weapons? But that's a level of abuse. And Kagwa here, the Minister of Finance, classifies coffee, puts coffee under classified. Now, you want a committee of budget to say, that's okay.
Okay.
Now, let me also give you a figure that will surprise you. The other year, which is now the audit report I had, there was a standoff of over 1.4 trillion, which had been put under commitment fees for loans to be borrowed. 1.4 trillion. I'll give you two figures where you could see the level of abuse and impunity, which the president is aware. Now, Parliament interrogated figures and realized there was no way you are going to borrow and pay commitment fees worth 1.4 trillion. It reallocated it to sector that needed money, whose unfunded priorities are brought by cabinet ministers
yes,
to Parliament. They are the ones who come crying before Parliament, please, I don't have money for this, including wage. We have asked the Minister of Finance, how do you bring a budget, even a budget of an NGO? Yeah, you cannot have a budget, Sarah, in your constitutional governance, where you don't have a wage.
Information.
They want to bring
Honorable, can I give you
That is
information?
supplementary.
Honorable, can I provide information?
No, first wait,
Yes.
first wait. Now, Parliament wiped
Honorable, I
away.
need you to wrap up so that I bring in Mr.
I'm going to
Kagwa.
give you two figures.
Yes.
Parliament wiped away the 1.4. They cried to the president. It was reinstated under supplementary. But in the audit report I had, even when they got 1.4, they did not spend unspent balance on that code at 770 billion. They never spent. I'll give you another figure. For the last 5 years, we are buying a classified military equipment, and our contractual obligation annually were 1.4 trillion. Now, the other year, Mara, you remember, then I asked them, but you guys, you are continuing to budget for 1.4, but the contractual period has elapsed. You know what these gentlemen did? The same amount of money, same figure, they reallocated and said now it is retooling.
Retooling.
Under UPDF. I said, how can the money for contractual obligation in sums, in quantum, be equal to the money required for retooling? So the whole budget, until you tackle now reallocation, until we deal with the supplementaries, until we define classified. Because the president should tell us where he gets also money to give like he wants.
Okay.
Under which law? So let's get to that. The other thing, bigger one, which you are not dealing with, is called debt rollover. And failure to pay.
Let's come back to those
domestic
details.
debt.
Allow me bring in Mr. Kagwa. Director Kagwa, quite a number of questions put to you. One is that...
It's not even yet over. We haven't started.
There will be gentle. I will protect
Let me
you, sir.
get with more water.
So
Give me more water.
let me ask a question. Has the Ministry of Finance been sleeping? Especially looking at some of the concerns that have been raised by the honorables, raised by Dr. Sarah. We haven't even heard from the professor. Why is the ministry sleeping? Where did you get it wrong? Why are we in this dilemma now? And what are you spending?
Thank you, Timothy. I've listened very attentively to the honorable members, what they've said, and Sarah. First of all, I want to reiterate what Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi has said, that the appropriation bill had never been returned. But that doesn't mean that returning it to Parliament was unconstitutional or was illegal. It is a bill like any other, and the president can return it. It is not sleeping on the job when Parliament, at the last minute, decides to reallocate monies contrary to what the executive's position was. And then you are taking to the executive, and there had been an executive decision on the strategic direction of the budget, and that is distorted. The president, if he's informed about the changes in the budget, think rightly, if he's satisfied that this should not happen, he can return the bill to Parliament. I think that is absolutely normal, and there's no sleeping on the job. Because it's not the only piece of legislation that has been returned. Doesn't mean that when it's returned, it's sleeping on the job. For some of us, for us technical people, when we go to Parliament, we sit somewhere on the back bench. We can't even talk. We are not heard, we are not seen. So it's the minister. And sometimes, because of the time and everything, the dynamics in Parliament, the minister may not have his day. But that doesn't mean that the processes that were put in the laws and in the Constitution allow the return of a bill in case the executive is not satisfied with that. So there's 750, you remove money, 750 billion, and you reallocate it. It has implications. First of all, on the obligations that government have. We are trying to avoid supplementaries so early in the year, because like Sarah rightly pointed out, if you know that something must be done, why do you say, okay, the budget has been passed, but we shall go back again to Parliament with the 750 billion as a supplementary? we don't want to start with supplementaries every year for things that we know should have happened. So that was the whole issue. 9 months of planning, we never have 9 months of figures. We start discussing the budget. We have discussions with consultations with everybody, the private sector, the public sector, CSOs, government, and at the end of the day, after that, we have the budget framework paper, which we bring in November. That is the first indicative idea of the budget, and then this budget, MPs make comments, and it goes back, and we return on by 1st of April to Parliament to have this debated. So all this process is fine to me. But of course it was unprecedented that the appropriation bill had never been brought back to Parliament for a review.
So let me ask, the 750 billion you're talking about, and you're saying they reallocated. Where did they reallocate it? Where was the problem with their reallocation? Between what you had allocated and what they reallocated.
Okay.
Can I quickly tell you where they went? Because you might not know.
I know.
Yeah.
You got 50 billion, you put it to tractors.
So let me do it quickly for you.
You got...
Can I do it quickly for you?
You microfinance support
50
center.
billion, Ministry of Defense.
Yes.
Microfinance for SMEs, 20 billion. Ministry of Agriculture, 50 billion for 400 working tractors and other accessories. Ministry of Education, 6.5, then another 8 billion, another 10. Ambulances, 27 billion. We are going to have 77, actually 80 ambulances to go to the constituencies that missed in the last financial year. So those who didn't get, your ambulances have been taken away. And those ambulances, we had given 17 billion shillings for fuel, to fuel them. Our mothers are outside there, and the ambulances need to be taken them. We had health centers, 3s and 4s, that we had started work on them, and there was no money. You did not allocate
Timothy.
money.
Okay.
We located 26 billion. No, this is important.
Yeah,
because
but
the population need to know.
This is my space. Honorable, can I use my space?
Mr. Kagwa, just
Then
hold
you
on.
respond.
Just
a
hold on.
minute.
Let him finish.
So
I'm bringing him to
26
you.
billion for health centers, completion of health center 3s and 4s have been taken away. Domestic arrears, 20 billion. Ministry of Works, we had added 15 billion, another 2, another 15 billion, another 33 billion for community roads. Community roads. Water, 14.5 billion, another 15 billion to connect our towns, and another 10 billion to do the same. KCCA, 10 billion, just to summarize. So this is where they said members of Parliament or Budget Committee were corrupt, or Parliament was corrupt. If this is corruption, you tell me.
Okay.
Yes.
Director Kagwa, coming
Yes.
back to you. Here I see ambulances, I see agricultural equipment.
Yes.
What had you put this 750 billion? Where had you put it that these members of Parliament reallocated it?
Well, the money had been put in so many areas.
No, these are the major ones I've counted.
But I'm talking about the areas where
Yes.
the money was, where it was removed.
Okay.
First go for the 400.
Honorable Chivumbi, please allow him to finish.
Can we have? Can I be
you
protected?
don't know, we read it for you where we remove the money.
400
No,
But
gentlemen, gentlemen.
Can I be
Members of
protected?
Parliament.
We removed money.
Honorable
Can I
Mara.
be protected? I'm not going
okay.
to be
Mr.
intimidated
Kagwa.
when I want to
Okay,
know.
that's okay.
Really,
Please.
if you are not protected, then I will
Please,
move away from here.
Please
We
proceed.
should have
It's a civil debate.
a civil debate.
Yes.
But not a boxing context.
Okay. Mr. Kagwa,
This is not a boxing
where did
context.
the money come from, the 750 billion?
There were a lot of areas where this money was
Yes.
removed.
Please give us a few.
Yes. One of them, for example, Ministry of Finance had 10 billion, which was for research. Yes. And you can't do any policy without research. And this is very important. We are saying all policies are going to be based on research.
Okay.
And that was removed. Then a transfer to other government units, capitalization of Uganda Development Bank. They said over-provision. How could it be an over-provision when UDB has a lot of projects that they are not financing in the pipeline? And we needed this money. And the president was saying, my money in UDB is supposed to help the private sector to borrow at affordable rates. That's where the money was. But it was said it was over provision. 20 billion from the agricultural credit facility. Agricultural credit facility is helping in the modernization of agriculture. And then that, yes, it was there. Now that one they have said it has failed, but we know there are so many successes. But I've also told you, we have reports. Do you have any report from there?
Mr.
I do have the report.
Give us two more so that we can go on.
Ministry of Tourism, for tourism development, 25 billion. That had also been removed. Ministry of Energy, for liquefied petroleum gas supply and infrastructure, 25 billion removed. Namave thermal power, there was money there because we need a backup. That thermal power has to have a fuel and a backup, 6.8 billion. It was removed. So that can be a conduit, you can investigate that. But I'm giving you where the money was coming from. Then rural electrification and connectivity project, 15 billion. That was removed. So there are a number of areas where, the 300. I'll give you the 300. No, the 300. No, the 300. The 300 comes here for funds for government obligations. There are obligations of government.
Okay.
And these things can be audited. The auditors are there.
Director, let me ask about
subscription in servicing local
Honorable
bills.
Chivumbi, let's have a civil debate. Director Kagwa, you talked about 350.
300 billion.
Yes, and some of that has ROCO limited. It has bills of exchange.
Yes.
It has EFT charges on Bank of Uganda.
Yes.
And this is a priority?
Yeah, there are obligations. Yes, it's a priority.
National priority.
It's a national priority.
ROCO is a national priority.
Timothy, when you commit, when you sign an agreement and commit that this is what I'm going to do, it becomes a national priority. It is a national priority because it's a national priority, because it's an outstanding obligation. Outstanding obligations are there. Then you remove 100 billion from interest payments, and you are saying we have over-provided.
Hey, that one you have over.
Let us sit down with Parliament and staff and see whether there was an over-provision. If there is an over-provision, that can be sorted out. But there was no study to say that this was an over-provision.
Audited you.
No, the auditor didn't audit this one.
No, they audited two.
They never audited this one.
This
is for this coming year.
No, but you have been over-provided.
This is
Honorable
Chivumbi, let's have a civil debate. I'm coming to you. Let's give him some time.
The auditors are going to do a forensic audit in this.
Yeah,
and they will bring you this.
Yes,
we are operation. We agree. If there is an over-provision,
the 750
we shall be brought to account for that.
The 750 billion.
Yes.
Instead of having a letter from the president, instead of having an appropriation bill returned, you wouldn't have a conversation with Parliament about some of these things that you feel their priorities are not your priorities.
With them, they're just turncoats.
No, I've told you about the passing of the law. That you can pass the law. Honestly, at the time these things were all changed, there was very little time for interaction between Parliament and the executive on the areas where these changes had been made. This was, I think we got it on that day when we are going to the floor of Parliament to pass the budget. So there was no time.
You said there's no time, but there was
no time.
There was time for a corrigenda to show up of 14 trillion.
Yes.
And there was no time to discuss 750 billion.
Yeah, because the time for the corrigenda was brought to Parliament.
Yes.
And Parliament had time to look at it. The reallocations.
4 hours.
Yes, you can say 4 hours. The reallocations.
What are we spending? What are we using to spend right now? Where is the money we're using to spend right now? As government, where are you getting them? Yes.
Today we are not spending yet. Because the appropriation bill has not been assented to.
So we're not spending?
We are not spending.
The cars are not being fueled?
We are not spending this year's budget.
At all?
At all.
They have up to September.
No,
okay.
We are not spending.
Let me bring in Professor Sarah.
That power.
Professor, this appropriation bill, when you hear it and see the letter of the president, what do you make of it?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I think I was, first of all, I appreciate all that the members have said. They're in a privileged place, which I'm not. But so they have facts that I do not have. But when I saw this letter, it was like, you know, a struggle of countries that at a certain stage of development. That on one hand, you want to do a lot of development. But then on one hand, you're struggling with the resources. So, and you're struggling with the resources in a context of donor funding being cut for various reasons, which we celebrated in the interest of national self-determination. And then you're also struggling to provide, again, with very heavy debt. And you know, each time we take debt, when we pay back, the interest rates are so high that we have to actually pay much more. The consequence of this is actually defunding development and compromising the future of a country like this one in a context of very high expanding population growth. So at the end of the day, the state is always going to struggle, catching up with a very rising population, which has certain demands, and which is very well informed about those demands as rights. And that's why we are hearing ambulances, because actually health is a human right. So people will need ambulances. We have been talking about PDM and NDP and the agro-industrialization. So the tractors become a priority. There are things of infrastructure. And again, here in infrastructure, of course, you have
Water.
You have water, you have roads, you have, but again, you are in a state where you have national obligations. And like the commissioner from finance is saying, if you don't meet these obligations, there are consequences, and there could be penalties, depending again on how the legal documents are written, which we haven't seen. So and of course, if another aspect in the context is the whole thing of the politics and the politicized populations and politicized environment. When our honorable MPs come in, of course, they promise with the voters so many things. And initially, they also struggle to provide these things, okay? And initially, of course, the president gives them the latitude to be able to provide these things. And it's true that individual MPs cannot provide these things from the resources they have. What would have been better is actually to push national development through the budget framework. But still, people do have other expectations. But again, you have this also occurring at a time, as he has said, maybe bad press on the parliament, but also certain facts, like some ministers, some members of parliament being recorded asking for something to be put in the budget if they are to pass it. So the cases, the jury is still out there, and the case is still ongoing, so we don't know whether this is true or not, but it is an allegation out there. You also have a parliament where these are portrayed as, it's not necessarily a very bad thing, as long as we know what to do with it. So there's a lot occurring in the context. And in this space, the head of state has to be seen to be doing something, okay? So if, as Dr. Sarah Vinete said, Parliament appropriates and provides oversight, and it's the body which is being accused of, and being accused doesn't mean they are guilty, but they are being accused, so then someone has to weigh in. And unfortunately, the weighing in occurs at a time that there's a budget allocation. Maybe it would have been better if the weighing in had been outside this space where we are told XYZ has done this, and therefore we just go straight for XYZ. So there's a lot occurring in the context. There's a lot of misgiving. There's a lot of debt. And by the way, the kind of debt we are having, and debt generally chokes development. So you continue having defunding of development. And then the more you defund development, the more you reduce your capacity of the population to provide. And that coupled with taxation, it actually takes out much more. So the economy will, the population will continue being impoverished while we are having these debates. So I think the president is trying to resolve a situation, but he's trying to resolve a very difficult situation. My
last question to you, Professor, before we take a break. When you hear Director Kagwa and hear Honorable Mara sees priorities, ambulances, he sees having these structures, and then he sees research, he also sees 350 billion going to ROCO. We don't know what benefit the country gets from that. What should determine the criteria of our national priorities? Because an ambulance is important if I'm coming from Busia, where there's none. His research to inform what money comes from Busia is also important. What should determine that?
I think what should determine this is national needs. And both of them are on that. The issue, they're coming to it from different angles. He is seeing it from the view of the actual deliverables. He, as a technocrat, is having maybe a macroeconomic picture of the country within a global context, and is balancing both debt commitments, national obligations, whose contractual agreements we don't have, therefore we can't trash them, plus also need. And managing a budget in a poor country like this one, with the demands that we have, is going to be a challenge because we have a young and dependent population. But basically, it should be national priorities, and maybe the priority then should be the research. Of course, I don't know whether 10 billion, as Honorable Chibumi says, it should be 10 billion or it should be less. But we need to have research-led decision-making, not just. I know sometimes politicians are accused of doing things that people are going to see. So ambulances are what people see, okay? So they sometimes are accused of, someone can accuse that of being a populist thing.
Research, we have the whole of the National Planning Authority doing strategic research for this country. And there's the budget provision for that.
Yes.
And then finance does a duplication in consultancy. We are saying
also the research was going to be consultancy.
The research engine of government on these matters is the National Planning Authority.
And that's the issue now of mandates.
And yes.
Which the president also talked to.
Which they wanted to rationalize. Yes. So we are saying all research fund the National Planning Authority.
Okay.
Now, 2, we are paying full-time professionals salaries, and then they consult. Okay. And do you know how much money is in consultants of government?
Okay.
Well, so, but anyway, to go back to, to my answer, I think you're right on that. There's an issue of mandate and who should have the right mandate, and it's good that the president raised the issue of mandate, but he was really talking about Minister of Finance vis-a-vis Parliament. But I think the point here, and I come from a university which believes in research-led innovations and research-led informed decision-making, which means our determination of whether we want ambulances, I know it's a given that we need health, but ambulances, tractors, and all those are very good things. They should have been research-led, and I'm not saying they were not, but I think the two gentlemen have the same need for the country, and national priority should guide budget planning. The issue is, how do we come to it? Do we collect the evidence, or do we go with what our constituencies are telling us? And the constituencies want tangibles. The technocrats want informed decision-making, but best they are looking at the macro picture within a global picture. I think, but then we have to go back to what Honorable Chibumi is saying. Who should do the research? Is it the NPA, or is it a different research entity? But I think research is very important.
Okay, let me read some feedback before we take a break.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Parliament on plenary left me in utter distaste in my mouth. For a country with priorities of 300 billion to ROCO, instead of buying ambulances for health centers, supplying water to rural areas, increased funding for women groups is total disaster. Where are our priorities? Bitature 240 billion, Sudir 86.4, ROCO 202, Atiak Sugar 302, Pineti, we can't even tell the billions yet in Lugoa. Now the same government again is allocating billions to things that really don't seem like priority. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the robust panelists and the appropriate topic, and it's timely. Watching you yesterday's proceedings during the ad hoc left me wondering what some folks still think about and how much of their appetite to eat is there. My heart is wrecking to the point of self-defeating and frustration on what is happening in this country, okay? That's Bwango from Fort Poto. Someone else says, I question Honorable Mara and Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, who sit on different committees of Parliament, the budget allocation to the newly created 10 cities, causing a misconception to many of us. How come Fort Poto City wasn't considered as a non-starter by the Ministry of Local Government? Where is the problem? Secondly, is Fort Poto City really a city, or are we getting peanuts from the national budget? Where is the problem? I would like to know from my beloved there. Lastly, David, I'm watching the show. I'm seeing the executive is ignoring the roles and responsibilities of Parliament, budgeting processes, and ignoring all essential requirements from the budget there. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be internalizing some of these and more.
Juko.
Yo.
Wachikuwa. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the parish development model, PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. But what you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that.
Okay.
The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
City Market lies in 4 acres of land with a population of about 4,000 registered market vendors who are doing business in this facility. We really appreciate the initiative of the government to come up with this project that is benefiting not only the business community within the market, but the entire community within actually sub-region. When you look at the market previously, the market used to be not like this one. With the market vendors, they used to sell under papyrus reeds. And we used also to ferry our goods, come and sell, then you take it in the stores or elsewhere. But now, due to this infrastructural development, the vendors now, they are able now to sell, cover your goods, leave it there, and you come and get it the next day when it is safe. The safety of our goods and the convenience of doing business has improved greatly. That makes the local community very, very, very happy when they are doing business in the market now. I want to appeal to my fellow vendors and the community, of the entire Chile sub-region, that we need to embrace and support the government so that they continue also bringing us more development in our region.
Back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines, my name is Timothy Nyangweso. We're discussing the appropriation bill. Basically, yesterday it was passed by Parliament, but what does this impasse mean between the executive and the legislature? I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sali, Honorable Paul O'Mara, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Birete, I'm joined by Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, and lastly, I'm joined by the Director of Economic Affairs at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Moses Kagwa. You can be part of the show. Let us know what you think. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your message there. Let us know what you think. Or the number 0709 60 25 92. That is our text and WhatsApp number, or our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. I see so many messages. We'll get to them in a short while. But let's continue with this discussion. Mr. Kagwa, let me come back to you because at some point, it was not a fair fight here. As the Ministry of Finance that manages the expenditure and the incomes of this country going forward, are you confident in the outlook of this appropriation bill?
Yeah, the appropriation bill, well, or let me say the budget.
Okay.
Was arrived at after extensive discussions, research and consultations. And that figure of 72 trillion was arrived at after looking at all the issues. One, we have debt obligations, okay, about 34 trillion. So you put that one there. Then you have about 9 trillion, which is external financing. So that makes it about 33 of the entire 72 billion. So we remain with about 28 billion that...
let's
yes.
do the math again. You told us 34 trillion
Yes.
is debt. 9
Yes.
trillion is what is coming in from external.
Yeah.
So of the 72, if we take off the 34,
Yeah.
we come to about 58?
About 28. Yes. And that's where government discretion in resource allocations comes in.
Are you confident of this
We
budget?
are confident that we are going to mobilize the resources to finance the budget in the way we have. Because when you look at it, we are going to borrow domestically, we are going to borrow externally, and then our own financing. Then there's the rollover that he has talked about of 12 trillion. We are not going to pay that, but we are going to roll it over. So when I look, when we break down the budget, when we break down the budget, I'm very confident that we are going to execute it.
So what's the problem between your priorities and the priorities that the budget committee had put forward? Where is the challenge there?
The challenge is we come up, as I said before, we go through a consultative process, and then we have a budget strategy, which defines the priorities, and we reallocate money according to those priorities. There are other things. When you look at an ambulance, it could be really a priority when you look at it. It's a need, but then you look at the other priorities that have been set to drive the economy forward and say, what do you need for this economy to develop? What do you need for you to be able to finance education, to finance health? What do you need for you to be able to finance your industrialization agenda, to support tourism, to support the pathogenic economy? All these are the issues. And there was extensive consultations with the public, and we came up with a document and said these are the priorities. And we never wavered on those priorities. And those are the ones we presented to Parliament.
So if the president ascended to this appropriation bill that has been passed by Parliament, you are confident that this country's economic growth and its economic security is in the right trajectory? It
is. Last year we grew by 6%. Next year we are projecting, and last year we projected 6% and we grew by 6%. Next year we are projecting to grow between 6.4 and 7%. So we are on the right trajectory. And we have started, coming with this year, we have started looking at how we can grow this economy tenfold. From the 50 billion it was we had last year to 500 billion. So we have started this journey, and this budget is part of that journey.
Okay. Yes, you had a comment to make before I get to Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi there.
And I thought it was starting now to go back.
No, it's coming from there.
You know, Mr.
I don't want to lose my thought of track from what he has said. You know what is very annoying is that Parliament spends a lot of time, as we have already indicated, through the sectoral committees. When the sectoral committee interrogates more than the budget committee, those line ministries. So some of them, they have put money there, they don't have a work plan for it. They cannot justify it. So the sectoral committee chair and the team, they take it away as a resource. They put it aside. Because you have to justify it. That is the process. So when the sectoral committee chairs are presented to budget committee, said, we have found a redundant resource in this place. That is when the budget committee goes ahead to relocate. Some of them are moved within the line ministry or reallocated somewhere else. So what has simply happened is that the work that the Parliament has done so much over time from the sectoral committee to the budget committee with these redundant resources, it means now it has gone back the way it is. So it means the entire process which we have wasted is nothing. It's come to zero. So maybe the executive now should, Mr. Kagwa, you should sit in the Ministry of Finance there, do your thing, start spending money. Don't come to us. Personally, I'm just wondering whether I should participate in the budget process.
Okay.
Because it's become meaningless. Seriously.
Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, when you look at this impasse, especially the letter of the president, where it has gotten, where does it put the legislature and the executive, especially in the doctrine of the separation of powers?
Apparently, it's a transformational moment.
Yeah.
By the way, there are many positives associated with it. One, I think Parliament will now have to fight for its space.
Yes.
In real terms.
Yes.
Without being chained. You know, these are reallocations of ambulances. Secondary schools had a problem. An MP, for example, once he's told your constituency has secured a health center, doesn't want to know the details of the rest of the budget. Okay? Now that MP has now been liberated. Okay? They will now demand to know the details. Because you see, what has been happening from sectoral committees and everywhere, people come with their own small things. Now that can blur the whole big picture.
I agree.
So for me, and people don't critically look at the bigger issues. And that's why they're eager to say, I. Because it's aware, there is a health center.
There's a tractor.
Okay? There is a tractor. There is an ambulance.
Yeah.
Now, I think taking away those small things will be transformational with the way Parliament behaves. Secondly, the president has been saying in his campaigns, if you don't vote opposition, if you vote opposition, the tube, the pipe is blocked. Because this MP of NRM is looked at the lobbyists for a government project. The president says that is no more.
He said that 2 days ago.
Yes, he said you are in darkness because you voted no. Now, you are being in a wetland because you voted no. Now, by now saying, wait, all things are rational. Whether you vote opposition or not, things, or NRM, no difference. No, for me, that will transform our politics. The other element is the way we've also had issues, the way the budget is approved in Parliament. How can Parliament approve a budget without a debate? This budget was approved in Parliament without a debate. A report of the budget was read, a minority report was read, okay, and a vote was called.
And everybody said,
Two, we've been having a scenario. The law is very clear, by the way. It says on the matter of a budget, it should be after the reading of a budget report by a committee of budget. 3 days should elapse before the debate, so that people can internalize. But let me tell you, it is run on the iPad as, as the chairman is reading. Are you magical? Even if you are senior 6, you cannot, even if you take a PhD person, will not follow. Yeah. That's why all the brilliant brains in Parliament keep quiet on budget matters, because they simply can't follow. Now, let's go back. Now, the law.
But that's the making of Parliament.
Yes, no, the law says at the passing of the budget framework paper, we should approve a ceiling for government. We want to stick to that.
Yes.
That on the day you come with the budget not paper like this, tell us that this is the total ceiling, and you not.
We have been very lenient.
We've been allowing you come up with addendums on the budget day. Then we have been abusing the law, because the law, you know it says at the passing of a budget framework paper, Parliament should approve a ceiling. for which government will not deviate from. 2, they have a charter for fiscal responsibility,
which they abrogate.
Which they have abrogated by letter, by comma.
Yes.
We are saying, can you go back and stick to it?
Then they have statutory revisions where they spend money without parliamentary
Then
approval.
they've been doing what they call repurposing a budget.
Yes.
They've been repurposing a budget, doing statutory revisions.
Yes.
Now, we will tell you, don't pass any budget without you paying money for Bank of Uganda. You have accumulated a debt of 7 trillion.
Without parliamentary
And because
approval.
of that debt, we are capitalizing Bank of Uganda to a tune of 400. We are saying, pay Bank of Uganda in total sum. Let me tell you, for me, as I've told you, from where I come from and where I've been seeing figures, I'm so happy with what has happened. Because one, I want to see them, whether they will not bring a supplement under 3%.
Yes.
For which I know they have a 1.2 trillion budget. Already they want to partake, these people are going to be embarrassed, including the president. Before March, before end of September.
We chased them away because of the statutory revisions. They were walking away like that.
Okay.
We brought them back. We forgave them. You humiliate us on 750.
Let's come to you.
Guns are all up.
So for me, actually, Sarah, let me tell the other Ugandans, this is the liberating thing for Parliament. Because of those small things, members of Parliament have been used to lobbying for smaller things. Let's see, is Micah ambulance, is Micah bridge, is Micah what? And then because of that, they are not even willing to debate the budget. Because he knows Micah small thing is there. 2, that's why members of, some members sign without reading a whole report. I've seen members sign a report of budget without reading it by letter, by a comma. It's simply because they have been whispered to.
My brother,
they have been whispered to that they know for you, your thing is sorted. Your highest sentence. So for me, from where I come from, when those things, and I've had issues with them, you know, that has been my long-standing issue. That the moment, and because I was having it difficult speaking to Omara in one evening, in the next day, because he knows has read his car bridge there, the man changes. So for now,
can I say something? I think you've had enough saying. Let me say something. Let me say something.
So for me, it is very transformational.
I hear you. Yes. You've had a say. You see, when I was campaigning for this elective office, I started my campaign at a very high level, my economics, whatever. Then the community, and even the ones who were educated, they called me, our son, you are actually very brilliant. Your brain is good. But we don't understand you. We don't hear you. We don't even know what you're talking about.
Your pockets are empty.
So I had to bring the economics down here until I was on the ground. So I discovered very quickly that if you are an MP, to sustain yourself on the ground, we can talk economics at this level. But the wananchi down there does not understand about the big picture thing of oil and gas, of ROCO, how your ROCO is creating more jobs and so forth. That person there on the ground who elected me, they said, we have elected our best son, is in Parliament. We used not to have roads, community roads, he's going to fix them for us. We don't have a health center, he's going to. That is what is common to them. They are not sophisticated like us.
That's why they've been
So hear me out. When we had our first meeting, orientation at Chankwanzi, as NRMPs, President Museveni warned us and said, the previous 10th Parliament, they have been trying to use their money, they are borrowed, they are broke. I'm warning you, don't try to follow them. He said, come here, we budget together, we solve those problems of yours. This is a total contradiction of what we had. That we need to budget for those small community roads, small health centers. Now you're saying they're useless.
Okay.
So this thing here, I want to tell you that this thing is aimed, and I want to tell the president if he's listening to me. No, I'm speaking to the president now. Your Excellency, if you're listening to me, I have received calls from Lao sub-region. People are very unhappy that their ambulances are not going. In this budget, which we reallocated, we are going to build 145 sub-county headquarters across the country. Those ones are not happening. The health center completion are not happening. And now people are hearing about ROCO. That ROCO is now the main thing. For them, their things do not matter. So whoever has advised the president has made a fundamental mistake. And I want to appeal to the president that this budget which he has taken, he should return them in 2020 what? I don't know whether we have a chance, 2025, 2026. They must come back before the final election. Otherwise, the NRM MPs are going to be punished in our region for this thing here.
Okay.
And these people are not elected. These guys who ran to the president and accuse us, because that is blackmail. The Omaras are doing this on your budget.
Okay.
We are the ones who campaign for him.
Honorable Mara.
Yes.
Honorable
Yes.
Mara.
And I speak for my people. People of Otuke did not elect me to give money to ROCO. They elected me to fix their community roads, to provide health centers, and that is why I came to Parliament.
Okay, Honorable
That's
Mara.
my number one priority.
Honorable Mara.
I submit.
First open that bottle of water there.
Where's water? I need water. Let me open a bottle of water.
Dr. Sarah,
Honorable Mara needs more water.
When you hear Honorable Chivumbi and Honorable Mara, and you hear how the legislature feels like they have been abused, for lack of a better word, and then you hear...
No, I've said we have been liberated.
No, we feel highly offended.
Hold on.
Liberated.
One says liberation, another is saying offense.
No,
Where
that is his
Where
word.
does this impasse put the executive and the legislature, especially the Ugandan who is at the bottom there?
You know, first of all, like I said in my first submission, we are talking about people's money. People's money, you know, does not belong to NRM. So as a citizen, it is fundamentally wrong now for MPs of NRM to start saying, I have my bridge, I have my community road. That's why the president goes telling communities, like he said in Nansana recently, that you are in darkness because you voted opposition. But you collect taxes from opposition. How the hell do you tell them that they are in darkness because they voted opposition? Should they stop paying tax? If the budget is supposed to serve the needs of NRM MPs, can we then say that all the Ugandans who don't support NRM, you are exempted from tax for the next 5 years because the budget will not serve your needs? So the budget should not look at MP needs and what. On that point, it is good that you move away from data and budget for a nation instead of budgeting for your constituencies. When you look at the role of Parliament, of course, I know 11th Parliament has got a lot of bashing, but it's because, you know, Parliament as a temple for democracy, they are held to a certain standard.
High standard.
That's why we call them honorables. That's not a charitable title. So when you conduct yourself in a manner that is contrary to what is expected of you, then you disappoint the people. You let down the institution. So the institution of Parliament could have been attacked. You know, like I said, that the president's letter was strongly worded. I even said, why did the speaker read it out? Couldn't she summarize the issues? Okay, yes, I know. But you see, it was very strongly worded. So, but the Parliament has brought the other bashing on its own to itself. You have a speaker who is the only one sanctioned globally. Uganda is the only country with a sanctioned speaker. 3 countries. That is your own making. It is not the making of the president. You have issues now, of course, your colleagues. But the president said he has evidence of budget corruption. Although what the executive does also amounts to budget corruption. Because when you have your priorities under the table, you are going to give tax sugar, or whatever, without the approval of Parliament. That is also budget corruption. The 3%, how it is used, is budget corruption. The so-called restructuring of the budget is budget corruption. The supplementary budgets on obvious things like salaries is budget corruption. Because the law is very clear on what should amount to a supplementary budget, unforeseeable, unavoidable. And unfortunately, as a citizen, Each time Parliament passes these, could not budget for statutory obligations. Why do you tolerate their carelessness and incompetence in supplementary budgets? So on several occasions, Parliament, you let down the people. Why don't you follow the law? If the technocrats cannot follow the law, let them leave their jobs. They are not permanent in those offices. That's where we feel let down by this Parliament. And within the first quarter, there will be a supplementary budget.
Can I give you...
Even with the corrigenders, with the whatever, they will still bring a supplementary budget because that is budget corruption by executive.
Honorable
I just want to give information.
Just hold on. Let me finish with Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah, when you hear, especially what the ministry has said, what they're saying, and I hear the pain of you speaking of a Ugandan, especially them paying taxes and expecting services, and it's not really coming out that way.
And just to add, that service delivery is a sole function of the executive.
Yes, not Parliament.
MPs need to get out of service delivery in order to do their function of oversight. They are now creating a conflict.
So when you look at this, if you look at this appropriation budget and look at that later, is this politics or is it economics?
It's both.
You see, economics are driven by politics. Once the politics are tilted, then you don't expect the economics to be straight. The people who take the big economic decisions are the politicians.
Is this bill in good faith?
It's hard to tell. You see, we have been through a cycle of budgetary abuse. Like it is chronic budgetary abuse. Supplementary budgets that are really bogus. You have systems bungled, a agenda passed in 4 hours. I don't know why Parliament, if the law says you need a report 3 days, why did you debate a new introduction to a budget in 4 hours? Should we as citizens then drag you to court? Why can't you do your work? You're guided by laws. So now if you go to Ministry of Finance, for example, of course we have a big debt problem.
Kagwa maybe knows. There is a big difference between approval of the budget and the approval of the appropriation bill. And there are quite a number of days that should pass, statutory. Now we've been bungling both of them together.
Yeah.
As we are passing a budget, on the same day, same hour, we pass the appropriation. Actually, a budget should be passed by Parliament, cleaned up, because you see, when you pass a budget, you have informed some figures in the appropriation bill to clean up. And after that clean up, Parliament is supposed to sit after a number of stipulated days to come and consider the appropriation bill.
You have not been following those.
We've not been following that. So you see, a budget, even cabinet, the motion at every stage to move Parliament to a second level is moved by the executive. If the executive is dissatisfied, okay,
with the area process,
with the processes,
why
with
do
the
they
decision,
move forward?
Why do you move forward and say Parliament has considered, and that means the executive has considered.
That's why.
And they are on the front bench.
That's why
on the front
bench.
So they have no moral authority, the Minister of Finance, to say there was no coordination.
Okay.
And even, let me tell you to the public that don't know, even on the very day, this Kagwa here should tell that he's a Muslim, should tell Parliament. They are at the very hour of passing a budget, they're in the Speaker's office. Minister of Finance, Ramadan, Kagwa.
Doing what?
Agreeing. Even the 700 million, they agreed on them. They
agreed on them.
Okay.
So, but if I may conclude.
Please conclude.
So my question to Mr. Kagwa, we have unspent loans amounting to 11 trillion.
Not 11, 14.
14 trillion. And
Yes.
we are spending on servicing them. Do you want to be taken seriously by the citizens viewing this show? Or you are incompetent?
He will respond to that. Honorable Mara, you had some responses to make there.
Yeah.
Don't intimidate
The point I wanted to differ with my honorable friend, Mwanga Chivumbi, is that even in the mature democracies like United States, every state has its own local politics and needs. Texas is different from California, is different from the other one. So for us to say the interest of the people of Otuke is the same as that of Mbarara would be false. So we must make sure that for purposes of equity, these things are catered for. And I'm still going to insist that politics are local. Politics are local. If you don't want your MPs to come back, you do what you're doing. A typical example, I will just give one. The vice chair, Remigo, he has a health center in Karamoja there, which was actually provided for in this budget. But it is in shambolic state, and you know, it's not going to be done. Honorable Parker, there's a bridge that links Mbarara, I think, and the Deputy Speaker's home. And he had even launched it, now you've removed the money. So you're going to cause MPs a lot of problems. And these are communities. And by the way, when I met the PSST, I congratulated him for the well-written budget speech this time round. You, the team, you did a great job. The population could hear themselves in that particular budget. Now, when it comes to appropriation, instead of the population also hearing you in this budget, you are saying, no, that is rubbish. We are remaining here, macro. That is the disconnect we are having. Let the population feel you the way they are. The other thing is that I wanted to tell my Dr. Sarah that when these people are considering priorities, you ask the question. First of all, they look at statutory obligations. Secondly, presidential directives.
So why do they fail to budget for
So presidential directive is like, that's why Honorable Manga talked about the blue letters. When a president sits somewhere and is addressing people and is saying, I need a dam here, the ones who are taking notes, they quickly take it and include it in the budget. So that is how our constitution has been created. It is a presidential system where the president proclamation is itself a directive, where people need to pick it up and say, what is the president saying? Then you look at NRM Manifesto, NDP 3, and Vision 2040. Those are what actually they collect to inform the budget. That's what they look at it. So don't be surprised, for example, if president said, I want more money to attack. It's a presidential directive. It's how you've made your constitution. That the president's proclamation cannot be ignored by the Minister of Finance unless you change the system. Then there is this constitution, Article 91, and Public Finance Management Act, the nexus about the executive authority and parliamentary authority on appropriation. I think the learning point for me is that where is the nexus? We have talked about the conversation. You have talked about 9 months. We have said 3 months. All this discussion has been going on. The unfortunate thing is our recommendations in the budget framework paper, these people just ignore it. When you look at the budget finally coming, the recommendations of Parliament to the executive is always ignored. That is why I think Parliament now eventually said, we told you about this thing. It is in our report. It is in our recommendations. You have not considered them. So where we'll find pockets of opportunity, we will move them and fund these things for the people of Uganda. So now that the president has said, return my things, which we have returned, so going forward, where is the nexus? How are we going to have that conversation? I'm thinking a situation where a budget committees see, with recommendation from sectoral committees, see those pockets of opportunities where things have to be changed. We have to make our recommendations where we have got revenue, and then we meet the president now, not these people, because these people who agree with us, they go and report and say,
Mr. Omara,
these people have done this
Mr. Omara,
yes.
I don't think we will now entertain a minister that comes with unfunded priority.
Exactly, that one is important.
No minister should come to anywhere in the corridors of Parliament and
also refuse
and this is the final one. The final one.
They should come to defend their budget as is.
Honorable do you know why it happens? I am told, Timothy, that they only have 2 phrases when they're meeting the president. They said, Your Excellency, as you have guided. Your Excellency, as you have directed. Hardly there is any debate there. So the strength of NRM as a political organization has been on the quality of debate. The intellectualism that used to make NRM strong has been thrown through the window. So people just pander to the president. So the ministers, instead of making a strong case that, Your Excellency, I have this one, is a live or die for my ministry, they can't, because there you have to just say, to be, I think, you must say, as guided, Your Excellency, as you have directed. You must have the debate, and we're not going to have that debate for you. We are going to have the debate in Parliament, and we are going to push back. If you bring things which are kwara, we are going to send it back.
Okay.
And we were going to have that debate.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Honorable Mara. Professor Sarah, hearing from Honorable Chivumbi and Honorable Mara, it seems like Parliament has also drawn a line and said, past this one, you don't come. This impasse that we almost are seeing between the executive and the legislature, where does it leave Uganda, and doesn't this risk Uganda not to get what they desire?
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. I think it is a serious problem. I think Parliament is angry, and I wish they were less angry, and maybe saw the silver lining like Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi. But I think there is anger, and probably the anger is being driven by the realization that Parliament has been bending backward many times and giving so many concessions, but when it came to their time of bashing, they were taken down without any mercy. But I think we have to acknowledge that there are obligations. There are obligations of Parliament, which means to focus on the local needs of the constituencies from their vantage point. There are also obligations of the head of state, who sees things from the level that he's at, from his technocrats, from his intelligence mechanisms, from the different kinds of information he has. But I think we shall lose it when we just focus on this current impasse. I think it is very important that people like those here and people beyond, like-minded people out there, including the populace, we engage in a bigger debate. Because the impasse you're seeing, whether it's rock or whatever, those are just specifics. The impasse you're seeing is an impasse of trying to create an industrial or an entrepreneurial class vis-a-vis providing consumption needs. The consumption needs are needed now, okay? We need an ambulance now, we need the road now, we need water now, we need the tractor now. Then on the side of the technocrats, they're talking about how do we build an economy which is self-sustaining, because if you don't do that, then you'll always be, saddled with debt. The debate, of course, the specifics are whether it is peanut we should be going for, whether it's Vitatura we should be going for. And the issue, I think, if we transcend these local examples, then we should be having a good debate on where should this country go. Unfortunately, there's not much think tanking here. And because there's not that, even the entrepreneurial class we are building, the middle class we are building, is a bureaucratic middle class, which means they can only access resources by their proximity to the state, okay? So what we need to be asking ourselves, where is our population? We are heavily dependent. I mean, everyone here is looking after so many families beyond their own. Now, you should also look at how do we move? How do we meet today's consumption needs vis-a-vis those that need to sustain the economy? And that will not happen with the amount of debt we have, with the amount of waste we have, with the amount of very many things. And when we come to being wasteful, it's not only the executive. Sometimes from where we stand, we think Parliament is also very wasteful, okay? It's just now that you're angry because you were bashed in a letter. But many times you have endorsed these kinds of things. So to the local population, it's like, okay, hi, what is happening now here? So I think we need to carry the debate beyond the specifics. The specific event is this. But as Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi is saying, can we look beyond this? So that at the end of the day, we have national questions about our economy. Because if we don't approach the national economic question, we shall remain poor, we shall remain debating this. Maybe tomorrow they will not take money of ambulances or whatever, they will just take, maybe we shall sell buildings like UBC. So I think we need to have a more sober debate. But beyond that, we should focus on how do we build an entrepreneurial class, which is not a bureaucratic middle class. And this goes to Minister of Finance. Look at the levels of debt, taxation you're having. Look at how do you enable your population to become productive, as opposed to just being consumptive. And then finally, I think I also agree that Parliament should get out of service delivery. I know, Honorable Mara, you're representatives of the people, but that should not mean you are the one who takes the ambulance. And that's why we see these scenarios towards election time. aspiring candidates give us ambulances with their things, with their pictures. If we don't vote, they take them back. So it means they were never interested in our health in the first place. They were interested in the vote. So it's true, everything is moved by politics and economics. That's why we talk about the political economy, because the politics and political interests end up driving the economy.
Absolutely.
So let things be objective. Let the people's representatives communicate to the state to deliver these things without people's names and all that kind. And when that happens, then Parliament will be able to provide its oversight role, not fearing to speak because its political interest is going to be, political economic interest is going to be harmed. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're coming to the tail end, so I will give parting shots. I will start with Honorable Mara, Dr. Sarah, Honorable Mwanga, Director Kagwa, and finally Professor Sarah. Honorable Mara, over to you.
Parliament remains angry? No, we are not going to. We'll recover next week. We'll recover next week. So what has happened now is a lesson to Parliament, a very big one. We have been very lenient to the executive. They have brought all kinds of things. We have passed them. We have bent backwards all the time. This has been the smallest consideration that Parliament has made, and we have been bashed really hard with name calling. Some of us have built our names for a very long time. In Otuke, some of my political opponents got the names of the budget committee members and surrounded my name with a marker and shared and said, when are they arresting this one? So that's why I feel very offended. So I hope the president will understand that blanketing people is not a very good thing. Secondly, we are now going to play our parliamentary role very well, my brother, that we will hold the executive feet on fire on matters of bills and matters of appropriation. We will do it with candor and with a lot of diligence. Thirdly, the PSST has said that we normally tamper with the budget. That's why they come with, and I think it has been re-echoed by the director, that our tampering of the budget makes them get supplementaries. So we want to hear, maybe supplementary will come next year, we don't know. I hope you don't bring in one.
When it comes, Jesse.
Yes, so supplementaries will not be the main thing. Then the last one, Mwanga Chivumbi is moving an amendment on PFMA, seconded by me, to get rid of the 3%. We want to mainstream it with the Constitution so that government can come to us anytime they need money. Whether you need half of the budget, it's okay. But that 3% must go off so that we see everything in terms of appropriation. And I hope that we'll be given a space.
That's already.
So that we bring it to Parliament and let it move.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Sarah.
I think for me, the clash between the executive and Parliament is an opportunity for Parliament to redeem itself. Yeah. The name of Parliament has been dragged in the mud for far too long. If there was an opportunity for the 11th Parliament to rise and redeem its name, this is the opportunity. If they miss it by being complacent to bungling of the budget process, which happens throughout the cycle, then citizens, I invite citizens to write them off completely. If they cannot redeem their name, then there's nothing we can do for them. Let's write them off, and we go aggressive and campaign for 100% overturning of the 11th Parliament.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi.
For me, as I was told, I'm not looking, I've told for me it's a transformational moment. And finally, all my years in the budget committee and my struggles are coming to fruition. First of all, I think we are slowly placing the president in the right place without him knowing. From where I come from, the entire debate about the national state of our economy needs to be focused on now. Because we are really, they are not telling the truth. If you cannot meet your obligations even to Bank of Uganda, you cannot reimburse money. Where
You accumulate to 7 trillion.
it has accumulated to 7 trillion.
Yeah.
If the people who do work for government
Are not paid.
are not paid to a tune of 10 trillion,
Yes.
okay? If, by the way, you are,
Your debt servicing of 34 trillion is
He
higher
has
than
said-
your revenue collection of 31.
He has said debt service will be 30, 34,
34.
revenue collection
31.
31. That means the entire money to do other things is going to be borrowed. Now, you have a choking debt rollover, which gives a yield of now almost 6 trillion in terms of interest.
Yes.
Now, the president has now come to terms to realize that there's been corruption on tax exemption. But the people are talking about budget. But there is a lot of corruption on tax, and all these tax exemptions are by ministers from this treasury here. Ministers sanction tax exemptions. We've been saying so. Now, Sarah, you don't know. The report I have, if you look at the 14 trillion of money borrowed and undispatched, but you have another chunk of money that is dispatched and not utilized. We are compiling figures. You know what agencies are doing, Mr. Kagwa? Now they get off, because they fear sweeping money back, they get them to some account in the Bank of Uganda and say this money is there for 2 years for unspent, both in dollar terms and in Ugandan shillings. I have those figures at hand. Now, when you get all those other facts, then you can have a honest, candid debate. Whether, by the way, the dream we talk about, it doesn't tell you. They are calculating debt. They are not now. Our carry forwards in oil are 9 and now 10 trillion. Carry forward in oil. That means as we've been geared up for this oil thing, by the time we go for oil, that $9 billion, that is 34 trillion shillings. Carry forwards on oil, so far accumulated, they're 10. Now, that is about 38 trillion of the money. So, what has been happening? Your defense expenditure, that's in 3 years, has risen from both internal affairs and external affairs have gone to about 5 trillion. Now, you've got to address all those holistic issues. Therefore, for me, we have finally gotten Museveni, because I've been a flag bearer of this campaign, that can we now focus on the rot in the economy? He's angry, but let's go back. We should not see State House being the first consumer of a supplementary. How can the office of the home of the president be the first consumer? You have people who retired. Can you have people who earn double salaries? One earns the salary as a former president, vice president, and
former speaker, former deputy speaker.
Former deputy speaker,
what nonsense
and then
is that?
presidential advisor.
Yes.
You charge a consolidated fund 4 times, and you are there. And you are there. So we can have now a honest discussion.
We'll clean that with an amendment in the law.
About all these other things, and say finally things are coming on. For me, as a doctor, you've noticed, I'm very, very happy with what has happened. I'm very, very happy with what has happened. I'm not even annoyed at all.
Okay.
Because finally, the MPs are going to be liberated. They are become so micro. No, most of them, on the day you first salary, you buy an ambulance. You put your picture there. You have no fuel for it. You have no garage where to take it. So, and you are blackmailed on everything, from money for car vehicle, from everything, including, I'm telling people of Uganda, if they feel the whole lot has disappointed them, remove us all.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much,
But
Honorable.
at the same time, don't give away our powers to appropriate.
Okay. Thank you very much. The silver lining is there. We hope the sun is here Director Kagwa.
Yes, thank you so much, Timothy, and thank you the rest of the team who have been here. It's been a very interesting debate here. Good feedback, which we are going to take. I've been taking some notes here on how we can all improve. I don't think anybody can come here and stand here and say I'm perfect. That would be very wrong. And we've seen some areas on our side that need improvement, and I think there are areas also on the legislature side that needs improvement. But I want to assure everybody that this year's budget is one of the best if it's implemented the way it has been set out. It has everything for everybody. The youth, the unemployed, the elderly, the farmers, the industrialists, the scientists, the lecturers, everything. There's a package for everybody. You can just look into this budget and see what is there for you. I think it's a budget of hope. It's a budget of going forward after the problems we suffered with COVID-19. I think this is a right recovery period, and this budget is looking at that, and it's going to catapult us to the stage where we start taking off to the increase of our GDP to 500 billion US dollars.
Thank you very much. Finally, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I can say is we're a poor country which is becoming heavily indebted, and it's becoming heavily indebted because of the choices we make. I think this is an opportunity for us to have a national dialogue on the state of our economy. And for us to have a national dialogue, the Minister of Finance has to give us robust research. And we would want to see in that research what are the key critical areas that can produce a productive economy, that can produce a local entrepreneurial class. You go to other countries, they have their own local entrepreneurs. For example, even in Nigeria, which we sometimes think is one of us, they don't even have any foreign bank because the banks there are locally owned. There's a lot that people there do by them. They even wonder how you can have a foreign bank operating in your country. But for us, we have failed to, we are all micro, petty, okay, you run here, you build these apartments, you go there, you have some little farm, and you think you have arrived. You can only recruit around 10 people, 20 people. We need serious African investors on this continent. And therefore, we need Ministry of Finance to give us the right research on how to grow this. And that also goes hand in hand with evidence-based decision-making around taxation. What makes you charge the taxes you charge? It is just not enough to raise revenue. You have to ensure that there's sustainability of production. Because, Timothy, if we don't have a local economic class, we are going to remain dependent. We shall remain a consumptive class. We come here, we look smart because we have earned money, but beyond the earnings, we are going to suffer. So let us have a national dialogue on the state of our economy. And then we shall stop this ping pong of consumption vis-a-vis production. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come through here. Thank you for the program, Timothy. I want us to agree all that what we're seeing is a result of how the speaker came to be a speaker and the current parliament. And another thing, the speaker is carrying a heavy burden of corruption, hence losing the moral authority, hence the results we see. This is Daniel from Kazo. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. I have a number of questions. I'm Felix Ogwang from Lira. I thought the budget is a summary of intended expenditure. What is the president so strict about in the summary of the intended expenditure? Okay, good questions there. This is Muhanguzi Felix from Shema. You should have brought the Honorable Msazi and the PSSD to face the patent questions raised by the panelists. Kindly bring them, okay? I think Director Kagwa did them justice. Okay, another one. This is quite lengthy. I understand your concerns. You're right. Despite the economic growth, many African countries still struggle. Limited economic inclusivity, dependent on foreign imports to achieve sustainable economic growth and technical. Okay, this is lengthy. The final one, and we leave the night. Good evening, Timothy. I really appreciate the true facts of analysis from Dr. Sarah and Honorable Chivumbi. The truth pains, the government would reconsider reviewing the budget to cater for the common taxpayer. All Ugandan taxpayers are surely bleeding internally and are being squeezed to the wall. Dr. Sarah also stands to represent the people that are facing these, and she has brilliant ideas that could change this. This is Sylvester from Kasese. To my panelists, Professor Sarah, Honorable Mara, Dr. Sarah, Honorable Chivumbi, and Mr. Kagwa, thank you for coming. We appreciate. And the production team for making today happen. We'll end it this way. A large eye does not mean keen vision. Good morning.
A large eye does not mean keen vision.
Juko. Yo. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the parish development model, PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
City market lies in 4 acres of land, with a population of about 4,000 registered market vendors who are doing business in this facility. We really appreciate the initiative of the government to come up with this project that is benefiting not only the business community within the market, but the entire community within actually sub-region. When you look at the market previously, the market used to be not like this one. With the market vendors, they used to sell under papyrus reeds. And we used also to ferry our goods, come and sell them, you take it in the stores or elsewhere. But now, due to this infrastructural development, the vendors now, they are able now to sell, cover your goods, leave it there, and you come and get it the next day when it is safe. The safety of our goods and the convenience of doing business has improved greatly. That makes the local community very, very, very happy when they are doing business in the market now. I want to appeal to my fellow vendors and the community, the entire Chile sub-region, that we need to embrace and support the government so that they continue also bringing us more development in our region.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
For incumbents to have a bad night on their first debate.
Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness